The Battle of Ellerson's Mill, June 15, 1862. Day after day have we been anxiously awaiting an engagement. Our leaders seem to be afraid of risking a battle, and our men are worn down with continued anxiety. Hundreds and thousands of our men are sick from want of proper food, and there seems to be but little chance for improvement. I was taken quite sick myself today, and with my captain's permission, went into the city to remain until I got well. June 27th. For several days we have been on the qui-vive for a fight. At last it has come. Day before yesterday my company was transferred from Huger's division, to which it was temporarily attached, to the 1st Regiment Virginia Artillery, commanded by Colonel John Thompson Brown, and we now belong to Longstreet's division. We had just gotten our tents pitched, picket ropes stretched, etc., when we were ordered to report to Brigadier General Featherstone, commanding a splendid brigade of Mississippians. We reached this brigade on the evening of the 25th, pitched our tents and camped for the night. At 10 o'clock we were ordered to rise at 2 a.m., prepare 3 days' rations, allowing each man 1 blanket, and report to General Longstreet near the toll house on the Mechanicsville Turnpike. We remained on the turnpike all day awaiting orders to move. A.P. Hill's division, having crossed the Chickahominy near the Virginia Central Railroad, flanked the enemy and charged upon them at Mechanicsville, driving them across Beaver Dam Creek to Ellerson's Mill. Our division then moved directly up the Mechanicsville Turnpike and formed a junction with A.P. Hill at the village of Mechanicsville, 5.5 miles from Richmond. The fighting for the night was over, but sleep was impossible, for well we knew the coming morrow would be a day fraught with heavy interest to the south. Jackson, we also knew, was on his way to join us, and was moving around to strike the enemy's right flank. About 12 o'clock at night, my brigade was ordered to the front to relieve General Ripley's, and my company ordered to remain in the road at the blacksmith's shop, awaiting further orders. The dawn of the 27th of June was announced by a shell from a Yankee battery, and pretty soon they made the turnpike a very hot place. Featherstone and Wilcox, supported by R.A. Pryor, were already engaged. Our battery was then ordered to take position where we could shell the enemy. To accomplish this, we had to move about a mile across an open field and in point-blank range of the Yankee batteries. Gallantly did our boys dash across the field, and in the very face of the enemy. Loudly screamed the shot and shell, but on we pushed until we reached our position directly in front of the Catlin House. Our guns were speedily unlimbered, and soon the clear, ringing report of the little howitzers bespoke the earnestness of the affair we were engaged in. Our Paragon and Howitzer No. 2 were stationed to the rear of the Catlin House, whilst the 3rd and 4th, my gun, were directly in front. The enemy's artillery soon ceased, for it was very evident that having been struck such a heavy blow on this, their extreme right flank, by Hill on the preceding day, that McClellan was drawing in his lines, and we were now fighting only a heavy rear guard commanded by Fitz-John Porter. Nevertheless, their sharpshooters were swarming like bees on the opposite hills across the Beaver Dam, and they made it uncomfortably warm where we were. Strange to say, none of my company were hurt. Pryor's, Wilcox's, and Featherstone's brigades were fighting heavily on our right, and their loss was quite severe, the enemy being strongly posted. Our guns were worked with coolness and precision. The Yankee skirmishers, being posted in rifle pits and many of them securely stationed up tall pine trees, had many advantages over our men, we fighting in the open field all the time. For several hours did we pour a galling fire into the enemy, and they replied with great spirit. About 8 a.m. our batteries were ordered to cease firing, and Gregg's brigade, A.P. Hill's division, charged the works in our front, meeting with but little opposition, as the enemy rapidly retired before them. The remainder of A.P. Hill's division was moving against the enemy's right flank, hoping to get in the rear of Fitz-John Porter and capture his entire force, but he, seeing Hill's intention, rapidly decamped. An incident proving the money-loving nature of the genuine Yankee occurred at this place, and I cannot refrain from relating it. One of our boys, in conversation with one of the wounded prisoners who had both eyes shot out entirely, remarked to him that his wound must be very painful. The Yankee replied, "I don't mind the pain so much, sir, but I wouldn't have both of my eyes shot out for $25. What a people. Eyes $12.50 each. This Catlin house was built by my grandfather, and sadly sweet is a recollection to me that for 3 hours today I fought within a few short yards of my father's grave. Yes, here where we fought today is the very spot where he was born, more than a half-century ago, and hard by is the grave where he now lies buried. Oh, who can wonder that my arm was strengthened and my heart nerved for the conflict? The balls flew thick and fast around me, but I heeded them not, and thought only of the sacred dead, whose grave had been desecrated, and his slumbers disturbed by the foeman's shout and the wild, loud clash of battle. Battle of Gaines' Mill, Friday, June 27th, 1862. The Federals were driven back through Austin, Sendor's, Hogan's, and Gaines' farms, silently skirmishing as they rapidly retreated before our successful forces. They made a final stand about a mile from Dr. Gaines's residence. Pryor's brigade was in the advance and was acting as skirmishers. The Donaldsonville artillery was attached to this brigade. The remainder of Longstreet's division was stationed in a thick wood near Dr. Gaines's house and was evidently waiting for the music of Jackson's guns. We knew Jackson was close at hand, for this morning, on following up the enemy from Ellerson's Mill, we took the wrong road at Meadow Farm and crossed over into Oakley Hill, where we ran into Jackson's men and skirmished with them some time before we found them out. The enemy soon found out our position in this wood and commenced shelling us at a terrific rate. Their guns were well aimed, for their shots skimmed above and around us in no very pleasant manner. Being somewhat worried by the delay, and wanting to see what was going on, I rode out to the front where Pryor's men were skirmishing. Seeing a deserted camp about a half-mile off, I rode over to it, hoping to get something for my horse to eat. And just as I was securing a very plump-looking bag of oats, a body of our cavalry dashed in at the other end of the camp, and the first thing I knew, one of them was about to shoot me for a Yankee. Remembering I had on a Yankee jacket, I cried out lustily that I was a Confederate soldier, whereupon they rode swiftly on, leaving me to carry off my booty. Shortly after 3 p.m., the welcome sound of Jackson's guns is heard on our left, and our entire line advances in splendid style. Our infantry, moving across an open field, subjected to a terrific fire poured into them by the enemy, who were strongly entrenched in earthworks commandingly situated. My company took position on the east side of Dr. Gaines's house and immediately opened fire upon the enemy. 3 of our guns, it will be remembered, were 12-pound Dahlgren Navy howitzers, fitted only for very close work, and I presume the chief good we did was to make a noise and draw the fire of the enemy. Our rifled Paragon, however, did good service and was eventually manned during the remainder of the day. The enemy opened a heavy fire upon us both from the north and south sides of the Chickahominy. We were also under a galling fire from their infantry directly in our front. Longstreet's division on our left charged across the open field in gallant style, and up the hill they went as if they meant to stay. 3 times were they driven back, but they rapidly reformed and finally drove the Yankees from their almost impregnable position, slaying them by thousands. The shot and shell from the Yankee batteries would strike in our battery and ricochet farther than our guns would carry, our little howitzers now being unable to reach the enemy. Colonel John Thompson Brown, Longstreet's chief of artillery, ordered us into a ravine where we are in a great measure protected. During the engagement, our battery was subjected to an enfilading fire from the south side of the Chickahominy, and how we escaped without loss is a mystery to me. Finally, darkness brought an end to the bloody scene. The enemy had been completely whipped out of their works. We captured a great number of prisoners, including the 11th Pennsylvania Reserve entire. Also some 25 or 30 pieces of artillery. We passed through many Yankee camps, and our men obtained a number of articles they were sadly in need of. The enemy, however, destroyed vast quantities of commissary stores and all their camp equipment. The people of Hanover were perfectly overjoyed to see us once more, and as many an old acquaintance in Kingsman grasped me warmly by the hand, I could but silently offer up my thanks to the Omnipotent for our success. The Yankees have been more lenient to this portion of Virginia than has been their custom, but the parlor walls of some of our Hanover houses bear ample testimony to their obscenity and meanness. Their letters, which we find scattered all over the fields, are also filled with obscene thoughts and vituperations of us of the South. One thing especially I noticed in the letters the Yankee soldiers received from their homes, in 9 cases out of 10, the people at home write piteous appeals for money and complain bitterly of the hard times, whilst our soldiers write home invariably for money. Many of the Yankee soldiers enter the Army because it ensures a comfortable support, and they can, if at all provident, put by something every month. June 28th. Our battery moved back last night about 1 mile and camped on Hogan's farm. This morning, when we awoke, we found a party of 800 Yankee prisoners at Hogan's house. Amongst them were several surgeons, and they actually refused to attend to their own wounded, but insisted, as surgeons were non-combatants, that they should be sent to Richmond and immediately return to the North. A great number of wounded Yankees had been brought in by our men and are receiving all proper attention. We moved forward to Gaines's house, where we remained all day, but near us there was no more fighting. Battle of Willis's Church, or Fraser's Farm, Monday, June 30th, 1862. I was in the saddle from a little after sunrise yesterday morning until daybreak this morning, and then, after taking a nap of an hour, had to move on to find my company. McClellan, having been so terribly punished on his right flank by the fierce onslaughts of Lee and Jackson, has now concentrated his forces on this, the south side of the Chickahominy, and is making his way to his gunboats on the James River. We are following him up as rapidly as possible. Our 2 divisions moved a few miles farther down the Darbytown road when our advanced guard captured a Yankee picket who reported their men to be but a short distance in advance. Longstreet quickly disposed his troops and advanced to meet the enemy. My battery was posted in an open field, but we could see no enemy, as a heavy wood was between us. The enemy soon rained a storm of shot and shell upon us, and we returned the fire with vigor. But as soon as our infantry charged beyond us, as at Gaines's Mill, we were compelled to cease firing, our guns being of such short range. Nevertheless, we were compelled to receive their fire, and, being unable to return it, made our situation anything but pleasant. Nothing is more demoralizing to troops than to be subjected to a heavy fire from an unseen foe and to remain perfectly inactive. The wood completely shut us out from sight, yet shielded us but little from the shot and shell. Here a member of my company, Edward Cullen, was struck upon the forehead by a piece of shell. We thought at first he was seriously wounded, but we were mistaken. I also made a very narrow escape, for a 2-ounce ball from a Belgian rifle passed through my gunner's bag, which was, as is customary during an engagement, thrown over my shoulder. I had in this bag about 500 friction primers, each and every one a little miniature cannon of itself, filled with rifle and a poisonous, fulminating power, the explosion of one of which would have caused the explosion of the whole. The ball passed through 3 thick pleats of leather, breaking the 4th and last pleat. Had it not been for this leather bag, I would have received this ball just below my heart. The fighting was still going on in our front and at a terrific rate. Again and again our men charged the enemy's works, but were as often driven back. At one time, Featherstone's brigade had to reform a few yards to the right of our battery and could only muster 250 men. One more grand effort, a dashing charge, and our men have carried the entrenchments. Kemper's men are holding their position with ammunition. Featherstone's brigade has melted away from 1,200 to 200. Still, our brave troops hold their position and have captured many a piece of artillery. Night comes on, but still the fight continues. Volley after volley of musketry pours its stream of death into our ranks, but our men cannot be driven back, and McClellan has to keep moving on. Our field of observation is so extremely limited, we can learn but little of the general plan of the battle or of the specific results. The wounded stragglers all pass through our battery and tell the same old tale of being cut up, badly whipped, etc., so that for a long time we were really in doubt whether we or the Yankees had been successful. The enemy fought bravely and contested the ground inch by inch. Our general, Featherstone, has been badly wounded. We have captured many prisoners and number of pieces of artillery. Also, a brigadier general by the name of McCall.